Today I have my special guest. She's an author as well as a podcast host as well. None other than Miss J. Rosemary Francis. Welcome back, Miss J. Rosemary, to one of my podcasts once again. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I missed?
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you. I'm J. Rosemarie Francis. I'm an author and recent author and podcast host. I cater to solo moms raising children alone. I'm also a mother and grandmother, and I love to help people reach their goals.
Yes, reach their goals. And thank you for doing that, Miss J. Rosemary. Thank you. And we will give you a cheering squad for doing that. So today, let's talk about enter- entrepreneurship mindset. So, Ms. J. Rosemary, you said something that stopped me for too long. The narrative has focused on lack, brokenness, and just getting by. Where does the narrative come from? Who wrote it, and how a single mother's being forced to carry out their own truth?
Mm, I think it comes from a lot of places. That narrative could come from how we were raised, but it could also come from our own adaptive mindset, meaning we just live a certain way and just soak up our environment, so to speak. The part I would like to talk about is when we carry it from childhood. If we live in a state of lack as a child, we tend to wait for the other shoe to drop when we are quote unquote in control of our own lives, because we don't feel in control. We feel somebody else is. And I think that's where a lot of that narrative come from.
Well said, Miss J. Rosemary. Well said indeed. You described solo parenting not as an obstacle but as a unique calling that requires special kind of resilience. Walk me through the moment, the shift in your own life when you should stop seeking a single motherhood as a burden and started seeing it as a calling. What changed inside you?
It's been a long journey. It wasn't like instantaneous, right? And my kids were practically adults before it made sense to me. I think what happened was that I figured out that life is lived in purpose. There's a lot of people who will say purpose, is just a waste of time, or it's just a story. It's not real. But I had to focus on why I was here on this earth. And there was a time when my purpose was raising my children. But once my children didn't need me anymore like that, I had to search for ways to serve because I wanted to serve. I feel like I'm a servant at heart, and that's why I was placed on this earth. So the shift came when I realized that, yes, I am put here to serve. And whether I am married or single, raising children or not, there is something that I need to do. But a lot of time we get caught up in our own heads, maybe because we have unhealed trauma. Again, that's not just a saying, it's something that's real. And until we get to that point where we come to this realization that we're more than just labels, we're more than just what people say we are. We're even more than what we tell ourselves we are, because we have a lot of negative self talk as single moms who are carrying some kind of pain. And so once we get beyond that, we realize that the stuff that's being thrown at us just isn't true. And the truth is held in God's hand. That's where the truth is.
Well said, Miss J. Rosemary. And you you're on a mission to dispel the prevailing myth surrounding single motherhood. What is the most damaging myth? That one that causes the most harm, and what replaces it when women begin to believe the truth about themselves?
Hmm. Well, I think the one myth for me personally that really made my blood boil, so to speak, was that single moms are loose, they're dependent, they're irresponsible. And that is so far from the truth. We are working moms. We're putting up with a lot of stuff that other people don't have to put up with. We're juggling a lot more than a person who's coupled, right? I was talking to someone on a podcast this morning, and we were saying that when you're married, no matter how unresponsible or uninvolved your spouse is, there's always that thought at the back of your head that there's another adult there, right? When you're alone, there's not that foundation, that thought, that concept is not there. It's just you. And so we have to understand that it's our job to dispel these myths, because these myths, they form cultural norms that works against us. And they don't just work against us, they work against the children that we're raising, future generations. So that's what I believe is the worst thing that you could think, is that a single mom don't want to work, or she doesn't want to help herself, or she's just a nobody. And I'd like to add that Jesus Christ says you're not a nobody, and that's the truth you should believe.
Indeed, you are not nobody. You raised the powerful question, what happened to 110 million solo moms worldwide? That number is staggering. Why are these women, their stories, their struggles, their strength so often invisible in our cultural conversations about family, work, and success?
Hmm. So, what you're referring to is the report that there are actually 215 million single moms worldwide, or female heads of households worldwide. But only about 110 million of those are counted, right? Half of them are counted. And the reason the other half is not counted is because some of them are absorbed into other household. Especially, so if a mom lives and her children lives with her dad is considered head of household. So that whole household, even though she's responsible for her children, is not counted as a single mom household. And she misses out on anything that policy would form, or be organized to help her. She misses out on that, because the benefit is only for the head of household. And that happens mostly in places like Asia and Africa, where they're extended families, right? There are also those who they are parenting solo, but they may be married, but the husband, father, has migrated to a foreign country for work. That happens in South Africa a lot, where fathers go away looking for work. And it doesn't mean that the kids don't have a father, she doesn't have a husband. It just means she's solo. She's raising her children solo, but she's not counted. Her husband is counted. And there are a lot of those instances where these women are displaced in policies. And so they're not counted. And the negative effect is that these mothers are not addressed, their needs are not addressed. And so their children's needs is not addressed, are not addressed.
Well said, Miss J. Rosemary. Well said indeed. How does the invisibility of a solo mothers affect their ability to thrive? What happens to a woman when she feels like she's the only one? When her experience is not reflected in the media, the church, and the workplace or the culture?
Well, what happened is that you're not recognized, you're not respected. Your needs, desires, and wants are not important because the media is not talking about it, government is not talking about it, no one's addressing you. So that's what happened, is that it's like you don't exist. And how do you not notice 100, 200 million people? How do you not notice 200 people, who are adults, who are influencing at least 200,000, 200 million children? How do you not, how does that work? So the effect is that you go in the workplace, you're not important, no matter what your job is. And so what I notice is a lot of professional women are now hiding the fact that they're single moms, which is not a good thing.
It's not a good thing indeed. So, Miss J. Rosemary, many single mothers carry shame, whether from divorce, from having a child outside of marriage, from not being able to make it work. How do you help women release that shame and reclaim their identity as a chosen, worthy, and called?
Hmm. That is a difficult one. And it's difficult because the shame is something that's internal, even though sometimes it's outside experience that cause us to feel that. And so we have to get to the point where we recognize that whatever we're feeling isn't real. And the reason, and I may get a lot of pushback for this, but the reason I said that is because just because somebody points at you and say you're bad doesn't mean you're bad. But a lot of times we take that on and say, maybe I am bad. And then we start to deal with that and making it a thing. But what I want to say, I always fall back to this. Whose report are you going to believe? Right? God says that you are his chosen, you're his masterpiece. And one of the ways we change that shame to joy and a feeling of self-worth is to change the negative self-talk. I am not this, I am not that, I'm not as good as that, into stand in the mirror and tell yourself how beautiful you are. It doesn't matter what your ex said, it doesn't matter what your parents said, it doesn't matter what anybody says. It's what you say that matters, and it's what God says that matters. The brain doesn't know what's real. So go ahead and tell your brain what you want to believe, what you want your brain to believe. And that's how you get rid of shame. Now, if there's something to be ashamed of, then obviously we address that. But carrying a child to full term, no matter how it happened, is not something to be ashamed of. And if you're divorced and have to raise your children alone, there's nothing shameful about that. Look at those kids. There are times when I think to myself, man, I wish I hadn't married that man. And then I look at my sons and I'm like, all of that goes away.
Well said, Miss J. Rosemary. The phrase survival mode is one of the resonates deeply with a single mother. What does survival mode actually look like day to day, hour to hour, and what is the cause of staying in survival mode too long?
Mm. So survival mode could look like chasing the bills, right? In a financial situation, it could be the fact that you live paycheck to paycheck and you have to be borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. Survival daily could look like that. It could look like you have a child who is quote unquote a problem child, and it's hard to deal, it's hard to parent them because they're going through stuff that needs addressing. That's a struggle. And there's no one else for you to call and say, look, can you help me with this? Day to day survival could be you and your self esteem. You don't feel worthy, you feel that shame, and you are maybe dealing with unforgiveness, not just forgiving another person, but forgiving yourself. No matter what you did, it's gone. So those are the things that we live in day to day. And the way to do it, again, as I said, if you're living with unforgiveness, learn to forgive yourself. Learn to let go of the hurt that your ex or whoever caused you. If you're having trouble with your child, you're struggling, there may be a teenager and there's a lot of problems there, get help. Don't be afraid to get help. When my youngest son was 13, I lost a way to deal with him. I went to my church, I went to my youth pastor, and I connected the two of them. And that man mentored my son because he needed a father figure. You're not daddy, you're just mommy if you're a solo mom. And your child needs daddy.
Definitely, yes. So, what does restoration actually look like for a single mother? Is there ever complete, or is it ongoing practice, or how do you help women measure progress when the journey is non-linear?
Hmm. I think restoration is personal. Number one, you can't. There is there is a framework, but each of our experience is going to be different, right? Maybe like one of my guests, she married her ex-husband again. That's a form of restoration. You may need healing from brokenness, from something someone did to you, whether as a child or as an adult. It's going to take time. I went to therapy for 10 years. It took me 15 years to get over my grandfather's death. I carried that around me into 3 countries across 2 continents. But restoration, we have to understand, takes time. It's like losing weight you've gained over the past 20 years. You're not going to lose it in a week.
So, Ms. J. Rosemary, you walked this path yourself. What is the hardest thing you had to heal from? And what healing teach you that now shapes how you mentor other women?
I think the hardest thing was accepting the fact that I was worthy of anything good. You know, like I've explained before that my mother left me when I was 9 months old with my grandfather. My grandfather died by the time I turned 14. And for a while there, I didn't have a parent. I lived with an aunt who shipped me off to England to live with my mom. And so I was being shipped around. So I just figured nobody wanted me. And so for the longest time, I never thought I was worthy. Then I went through 3 marriages and divorce. Again, nobody wanted me. So I had to work through that and realize that it wasn't about me as a person. It may be about my decisions. My decisions is they aren't who I am. And so what I had to do was learn to make better decisions and learn to see myself as God sees me.
Well said, Ms. J. Rosemary. You're a solo mother and an entrepreneur. You built a platform, authored books, hosted numbers of podcast episodes. What does entrepreneurial mindset look like for a woman who is also the sole provider and primary caregiver for her children? How is that different from a typical hustle culture narrative?
Hmm. Well, it is different in the sense that, for the same reason, it is different for a married couple than it is for a single mom. Because if you're, when my kids were younger, I run an insurance agency out of my home. And that's what I had to do because otherwise I'd have to take my children to daycare and all my money would go in daycare because daycare is expensive, right? And for 2 children, it's more than rent, right? And
Yes.
so, yeah. And so that's what entrepreneurship look like. Your kids on your hip and you're on the phone with a client and you're praying that they stay quiet or your client is understanding, right? And so it looks different that way. I'm reminded of during the pandemic, a lot of people did Zoom meetings
Yes.
and they only had their top on. Their bottom were pajamas or underwear or whatever it was. A lot of single moms operate like that in pandemic mode because we have to juggle so many things.
Mm. Well said, Ms. J. Rosemary. Many single mothers have this entrepreneurial instinct. They are resourceful, resilient, accustomed to doing more with less, but they don't see themselves as entrepreneurs. How do you help women recognize the entrepreneurial gift they already possess?
I think we have to change our mindset, right? It's like, because when we're in the workplace or we're applying for a job, being a single mom is a negative. But if you start to list your skills, even without a college education, if you start to list your skills, we have to maintain multiple schedules, multiple priorities, school, work, doctor. We have to stay organized, run a household, manage finances. We have multiple skills that many people don't possess. We are resilient. One of the things I noticed about myself as I went through raising my children, I developed this patience that I never had as a young person. And so we have to understand that we have a lot of skills that are not recognized by anyone else, but it's our job to make sure that those skills are exhibited by us.
Well said, Ms. J. Rosemary. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please to listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in sixth season. Abstract poetry in third season, and of course, my book 101 review in sixth season too. A comedy 101 of fourth season, and my food 101 in sixth season as well. Geography 101 love letters, movie 101 review, music 101 are in fifth season, science 101, sex 101 fourth season, and of course, my trivia 101, motivation 101, spiritual awakening 101, entrepreneurship 101, law 101, mental health 101, coaching 101, and of course, my Bible verses 101 are my baby podcasts. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Miss J. Rosemary, if you had to distill your life work, redefining a single motherhood, moving woman from survival to purposeful thriving, anchoring identity in faith into one question that every single mother should ask herself regularly. What would that question be?
Mm. Why am I here? And what am I supposed to be doing right now?
Certainly. So, Ms. J. Rosemary, can you please invite our listeners to support your podcast, your books, or your business, or anything you want to promote on Entrepreneurship 101?
Yes, I would appreciate you if you would listen to my podcast, Solo Moms Talk, or visit my website, solomomstalk.com. I also have a free gift bundle where I give away portions of my devotional at solomomstalk.store. And you can follow me on Instagram at solomomstalk. Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate this.
You are most welcome, Miss J. Rosemary. Let's empower fellow podcaster and hoping for more success. So, Miss J. Rosemary, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate you.
Likewise, and more to come, people. See you